Greetings to you in the name of the Triune God. Havruta, God Talk at Crossroads. It is the Christian commitment that motivated the Dharma, Jyoti, Vidya, Peeth community to be a Havruta, a co-traveler with you during this time of pandemic. Fear, uncertainty, doubt, suffering and pain, all are real that disturbingly challenge us. Many questions are raised in the context of this unprecedented experience of perplexity. Questions are raised on the value and role of God, how to understand and respond to suffering. We are at a crossroad, struggling hard to find a meaningful answer. However, a very small ray of light could lead one to move forward. Short videos presented in the Havruta series is a humble attempt to shed a feeble yet useful ray of light to motivate confronting and creative responding to the present suffering. This presentation is the last of the series, trying to understand how the early church responded to suffering rooted in Christian faith. What is suffering? Suffering is a reality that inflicts pain. It is a result of various circumstances like climatic, political, economic, pandemic, and so on. How painful is suffering? The answer depends on how one perceives pain and suffering. Take the case of a mother giving birth to a child. Giving birth to a child is a painful experience. But the mother bears this pain with satisfaction because she visualizes the face of her child beyond this momentary pain. The pain is real. However, vision of a new birth empower her to confront the suffering in hope. What is Christian understanding of suffering? Christianity does not view suffering as unreal. It views suffering as very real. However, it does not limit its attention on the present suffering alone. It always visualizes a beyond liberated future. This certainty of liberated future is based on the experienced salvific act of God. Therefore, Christianity responds to suffering from a comprehensive historical perspective, where the present is interpreted in terms of the past experience and the hope of a liberated future. As we look into the history of Christianity, the consolidation of Christian faith is based on the historical Christ event. Was Christ event devoid of suffering? The very Christ event itself is full of suffering. Jesus undertook these sufferings out of love to the world. John 3:16. He underwent them so that the world might have life in abundance. John 10:10. The birth of Christ itself projects the suffering of the people to which God has identified. It exhibits the suffering of the economically segregated, where the right of a decent childbirth is denied. It reveals the suffering of the politically subjugated people, where people are demanded to prove their citizenship through registration. It shows the suffering of the hegemonically tortured people, where generations are slaughtered to safeguard the rulers. What about Christ's public ministry and suffering? Public life and ministry of Christ was also not devoid of suffering. Religious fundamentalists like the Pharisees opposed him wherever possible. Political opportunists like Herodians tried to trap him, raising politically charged questions. Roman imperialists tried to suppress Jesus and his movement to keep things under their control. All these culminated in crucifixion. It was real, but not the end. That is why Christian orthodoxy categorically denied the Gnostic attempt to present these things as unreal. Through the historical events of resurrection and ascension, the power of life and truth over death was affirmed. Hence, Christianity did not view such sufferings with a pessimistic eye. Instead, they are seen as resistance and optimistic pursuit for life, climaxing in victory over the vicious powers of death. What about apostolic and post-apostolic Christianity? Apostles continued the ministry of Christ, leading to the establishment of the Christian church. In her historical journey, Christianity had to confront with persecutions on various counts. First, the fundamentalist attitude of Jews inflicted torture and suffering on Christians. Some, like Stephen, were stoned to death. Some were put in jail. Some were beheaded. Once the Christians and the Jews parted way and Christianity got rooted in non-Jewish communities, the Roman Empire started persecuting Christians. Even though in the initial stages persecutions were localized and sporadic, by 250 CE they became empire-wide and systematized. As a consequence, the suffering of Christians became universal and unbearable. What are the dynamics behind persecutions? Various elements played their role in instigating persecution. Emperor Nero persecuted Christians to divert the public attention from him for burning of the slums. Therefore, suffering was the result of political opportunism of the ruler. Roman emperors demanded emperor worship, accepting them as Lord and God. Christians denied this deification of the emperor. Hence, they were categorized as anti-nationals and persecuted. Whenever there was a natural calamity or a pandemic, Christians were falsely accused as the reason and were persecuted. They were accused as anti-social elements for their concerns for the downtrodden. Their coming together for worship was prohibited. Market was closed for them. Properties were confiscated. In short, freedom of travel, a right of fellowship, a right of ownership, a right of purchase were denied. So persecution became a socially, politically and existentially life-threatening suffering. How intense was suffering? Persecutions were brutal. Some were tossed alive to give light in the amphitheaters. Some were fried in oil. Some were thrashed to death. Some were beheaded. Some were thrown before hungry wild animals. Some were drowned in water. Many were persecuted in front of their dear ones, so that those who see may recant their faith. Bishops were the first targets, but they were not alone. Priests and the faithful community had to undergo persecution. Both male and female, old and young, free and slaves, all had to suffer for the sake of Christian faith. In spite of this unimaginable suffering, most of the Christians remained faithful. Once Roman Empire accepted Christianity, Persian Empire started persecuting Christians systematically. How witnessing was their response to suffering? Early Christianity responded to these situations in faith. To combat false accusations, apologies were produced by early teachers of faith. Martyrdom became the expression of their commitment unto death. Martyrdom was a non-violent resistance to the violent persecution. It became a witness to the hope of a liberated future. Teachings edified the community to stand firm in faith. The non-violent resistance was potent enough to make the observers moved. That is why, in spite of the violent persecutions, Christian faith community grew. This is the prime reason why Tertullian said, "The blood of the martyrs is the seed of the church." What is the need of the present? The present scenario also presents a convoy of suffering, primarily on pandemic ground, coupled with politically, economically, and socially imposed sufferings. Disturbing questions may emerge. However, in the midst of such situations, we should see the strength of non-violent resistance to the suffering and the power of witness of the hope of a liberated future in that. It is here the Christian response of the early church becomes an edifying eye-opener. Then we will be able to become co-travelers to those who are in the midst of suffering and pain. I congratulate the efforts of the Dharma Jyoti faculty in bringing out the Havruta series. It was a collective act. My special thanks to Reverend Mathew, Reverend Dr. Baiju Marcos, Reverend Shibu Kurian, Reverend Joseph John, and Reverend Manu Varghese for the presentations, and to David John Varghese, Kevin Varghese, Anix Johnson, Jim Isho Thomas, and Sujit Iti Mathew for the technical support. I request you to subscribe this channel and share the video so that others also could benefit. Thank you. May God bless you.